So I'm going to call the roll. Carolyn Mish. Yeah, I'll come back.
Present.
Present. Deb Clemmer,
Yes.
Angie Gregory,
Yes.
Ben Weil, yes. Louis Hasbrook,
Yes.
Eric Winkler.
Present.
Okay. And the first item is public comment period. We have one member of the public, but her item is on the agenda, and so we will get to it post haste.
Sorry.
So the next measures to review or approve minutes. Any discussion or
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
seconded? Okay. I will call it or I will vote on that. So Carolyn Mish,
Yes.
Deb Clemmer,
Yes.
Angie Gregory,
Yes.
Ben Weil, yes. Louis Habrook,
Yes.
Eric Winkler.
In favor.
Okay, that's done. So I'm going to give a brief grants update. So it just let's see. Now I had a really good reason why I put this in this order. What do you remember the reason? That's right. That's right. Thank you. So we applied for and kind of were surprised that we got a Green School Works grant for a heat pump hot water heater system for Smith Voc. And we did that basically because was the one type of system that we could completely separate from everything else. And so we could do it without having to involve other things. It should be, it's not done, but it should be a good example of both using thermal storage to allow us to shift our peak usage at Smith Voc and to do grid response, and to be demonstrating a large sized hot water system of the type that will satisfy, a large campus, large demands, in this case, 2 commercial kitchens, often washing dishes simultaneously. So it's a good demonstration. Again, we should be probably implementing that. We're still working with the engineering team to figure out if we can start implementing over the winter, or if we'll wait until next summer to do it. Another small grant. So was there another one that we needed to update?
You can mention, it's up to you if you want to mention Community First Partnership.
Just that we can now talk about it publicly.
Not say community.
Hey, why don't you do it?
It's really we just have the okay to publicize that we got the Community First Partnership grant, which was Hannah Davis, who was here last time. They're the energy advocate for Northampton, East Hampton, West Hampton. So we basically just have the official okay to start publicizing. So we'll start seeing what do they call it when the newsletters? Yeah, just about the Community First Partnership, the on-street charging feasibility study, which is where the EV chargers, all that, the surveys that we had that everybody filled out. Ben mentioned Green School Works. And then the last one, which Ben has more info than me, is the Mass Save Community Education Grant.
Right. So a community education grant is meant to go to a nonprofit and works with the city. So in this case, the city is really just going to become the pass-through for the funding, but that means we help direct what they do. In this case, they is Cindy Fand, who was originally working with the city of Greenfield. They were not able to accept the $25,000 for reasons I don't exactly understand, but Cindy was the one who had won the grant. So she came to us and said, can we work with you? And I said, yeah. And National Grid said, yeah. So we now have her, and she has a lot of experience. She was an energy advocate in Sunderland and other places I can't remember, but up in Franklin County, basically. And so she's already done a lot of this kind of community outreach, energy advocacy stuff, and she wanted to do more of it. I'm hoping that she can. She wants to do some events. She wants to do a lot of outreach, and that's why I wanted to do this before we got to Denise's topic, because she will potentially provide some resources for public outreach and events, and potentially being able to use some of that $25,000 to support those events. So we're still we don't have an actual contract yet. We're still working out how to transfer it, but it seems so far everybody's okay with it. And that was my update. And unless we have discussion on any of that,
I just have a question.
yes.
Is somebody going to send out something that we can put in our newsletters?
Same question. Actually, now that we have permission to actually release the details on those, we should. That's a to-do item for us is let's actually, yes, sorry.
For Community First Partnership, I did ask Hannah. I
Uh-huh.
emailed Hannah. They did not respond, so I will reach back out to them.
Okay.
Because I did ask them to reach out to everybody in NESC. So I will reach back out to Hannah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I'll probably put one out next week. I guess.
Okay.
Before.
I'll email her tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. Anything else you wanted to just send it to me?
And similarly, once we are sure that the Cindy Fan Community Education Grant is actually in our hands, I'm sure that Mayor will want to announce it too. And yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question on the community education grant? Is it similar to what Hannah will be doing in terms of outreach, or it's a different kind of like things you can do on your own, like personal behavior, choice making kind of thing, or?
It can be, it's really, really loosely defined. Like, I mean, I don't know. She's part of what we have to do with her is rewrite her scope of work, because she wrote it with Greenfield and there's some differences, but it's really loosey goosey. Like she got it somehow. And it's about outreach, but it's not very particular about what it's for. I mean, her emphasis recently has been weatherization and heat pumps. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's reaching out to this on the same topic, but maybe to different people or in different ways. I suspect she would be open to input if there's additional things that we should be reaching out to our residents about, especially if we get to this discussion about how to respond to the changed financial situation for some energy options, that may be more relevant. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that if, for instance, you wanted to have an input on, I bet you could.
Okay, cool. I mean, I think it would be interesting to see how the scope of work for both of those positions kind of differ, or if there's opportunities. Yeah.
Any other discussion, or shall we move to the topic of a Sunday event? Okay. So Denise Lello is representing the Northampton Climate Emergency Coalition. And you have a microphone? Okay.
So it's green. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Okay. Whoops, that's the wrong document. I started taking notes on this meeting, so I have to get back to my other document. Here it is. All right. So my name is Denise Lello. I live in Northampton, and as Ben said, I'm representing a coalition of climate action groups known as the Northampton Climate Emergency Coalition. I'm here to invite members of the Northampton Energy and Sustainability Commission to participate in an event that we are planning for this fall. So some of you may know of Bill McKibben. He's a celebrated writer and climate activist and the Schumann Distinguished Scholar in Environmental Studies at Middlebury College. His group started this, encouraging a global day of action on Sunday, September 21st. So the idea began as a celebration of solar and wind power and the achievement of a fossil fuel-free future. So it might seem strange to celebrate solar and wind energy sources during this time of hostility to renewable energy by the federal government. But the truth is that not only are most states, including Texas, moving toward renewables, but people in general recognize the climate catastrophe and associated cost caused by our continuing use of fossil fuels. Solar energy is now the cheapest source of power on Earth. And to celebrate this, Northampton and East Hampton will join communities across the nation with our own Sunday Action Fest. The sun can power the valley. We know that many of you are already actively engaged in work that supports our transition to a clean, healthy, and just energy future. We also know that much of your work is unknown to most community members. We're designing this event to showcase the progress and the programs that you have made possible and the ways that you are supporting community members to realize healthier, safer, and more sustainable ways to live. For example, the Electrify Northampton East Hampton project can assist many homeowners to move forward with weatherization and electrification to make their energy bills more affordable and to shrink their carbon footprint. This fair is an opportunity to familiarize community members with the program, to introduce Hannah Davis and others now who can support people as they navigate the process. Nonprofits such as the Center of Ecotechnology and Valley Green Energy CCA can also amplify their outreach. So we're in the early stages of creating this event, and we want to encourage your involvement. We're inviting you to lend your voice and expertise to this event. We want city government departments, as well as community members, to showcase what is possible to make their homes and communities healthier, safer, and more affordable. So the date of the event coincides with that of all Sunday events. So you can Google Sunday, 2 words, to visit the website where people are sharing ideas and events, from parades to teach-ins to art installations. Just put in your zip code. We haven't registered ours yet. Originally, we thought the time on that Sunday would be 11 to 3, but that's a little dependent on being able to find a good location. We had hoped that Smith Vocational and Agricultural High School would be the location. It's a perfect place. People are familiar with it. We do other community events there, but there is a little scheduling conflict, so we're trying to work that out. Some of the activities will be indoors, tabling and exhibits, and others like vehicle and equipment showcase would be outside in the parking lots or in front of the main school building. We'd like this to be a fun event. So we want to include a food truck or 2, some kid-friendly art activities, maybe some butterfly presentations, and we have some ways that we envision the city government and NESC can help. So that includes publicity. Maybe we have some money for publicity, like a press release, maybe a flyer in a city mailing, encouraging city departments like the DPW, the building department, fire and police departments to showcase programs or electric equipment. Like I was thinking of the new heat pump water heater, but I guess that's not going to be online yet, but we could at least talk about it and give people the idea of what's coming. So we look forward to your ideas, and I'm happy to entertain any questions now or later via email. It's a simple email address, LELLO, my name, and first three letters of my first name, DEN, @gmail.com. And thank you for all your work on the Energy and Sustainability Commission. So anybody want to ask a question or have any ideas?
So, any questions from the commission or yeah, questions or ideas? So your ask to us is participation.
Yep.
Pretty much that's it. And that could be as individuals perhaps representing NESC, but looking at your own individual capacity if you wanted to participate. Does anyone have any Eric broadbent?
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I hope this is an opportunity that we can all take to move our energy future a little closer than it might be. So thank you for considering it. Yeah, so the ask is participation, but also, as Denise said, perhaps something in the city mailing or something on the website, a little bit of outreach from the city would also really help us because it shows that the city is a willing partner in this in this effort. So thanks.
Louis?
I think that well, for sure, the building department can put somebody at a table with a pile of paper. And I'm not sure what, I'm sorry, it's like, I've been there a few times. And I'm not sure what it'll be yet, though, because there's a bunch of things going on. But we could come up with something that directly speaks to the increasingly stringent energy code requirements, things like that.
I think that's a really good idea. I think a lot of people don't understand how far energy code has come, and like and I know Louis, that it's also how complex it has become, but it does a lot more than did, and I think that's something that would be actually really valuable for people to see. Kind of actually now meeting code is pretty darn good, whereas it used to be, whatever, back when I was first involved with this stuff, is like, yeah, it's literally the worst you can possibly do illegally, and and lots of people around here would kind of like scoff at it, and now it's like, yeah, I mean, you could go a little better, but not much. So I think that's a valuable thing. Sorry, Eric Winkler.
Yeah, so is there going to be an opportunity for organizations to make presentations? Is that how this is going to be designed?
So it could be a choice, right? So you could decide that you want to sit with a pile of papers, or you can decide that you actually want to stand up and make a presentation. So you might have a particular small thing. It doesn't have to be an overview, but something that you're particularly proud of, or something that's particularly problematic that you'd like to clarify. I see this, and hopefully, I mean, there are a lot of people involved in organizing this, so right now I'm talking for myself. But I see this as such an opportunity for people to get information about the really valuable things that the city does and how you can be helpful in the transition to electrification. And in all parts of our lives. So whether it's your landscaping equipment, or, your water heating, or your cooking, or, any of those things. So we're kind of casting a broad net in that regard.
Okay, thanks. I'm finished though. So we as a group, the commission, are we, obviously this would be a great opportunity for the commission to highlight, the things that we've been doing over the last however long we decide to go back. There's plenty that the citizenry of Northampton should get access to in terms of information about what this commission does. So the question, I guess I'll put it to Ben is, I mean, could we be ready by September 21st to, do a 15, 20-minute presentation on some of the key projects that we've been working on, the funding that we've obtained, and then also, I think it would be helpful to use that time also to give folks a sense of what direction we're moving in, what the future looks like in terms of what we're working on. It sounded like people don't know what we're doing, and that may be true. And if there's any truth to that, then this event would be a great opportunity for us to highlight the great work that has been done. But to you, Ben, I mean, someone's going to have to do the presentation. It definitely should not be a piece of paper that we hand out. That is not. We need a face and a voice and ability to interact with citizens. So I can support doing this as a commission. I can support if we want to financially support some of the work, and certainly for the outreach, the city. I mean, if the city has the ability to shoot some kind of press release or some kind of support to publicize it. I think in our last discussion of today's meeting, I think there may be some new opportunities to create some clarification. And what I'm thinking is with the impending death of ITC on rooftop solar, I'm not sure what solar installers are going to be, what their outlook is come 2027. So there's things that could be spoken about that can help assure people of moving forward, because there's no going back. It's only going forward. So that's my comment and support.
Yeah, I think I'll respond to the kind of the what should we present. I think yes, we can be ready, but I'll respond to that after we hear what Deb wants to say.
Yeah, I think we should. I'm definitely supporting this, and just with everything that's been going on around the city budget and how we spend money, and what does CAPA do, and people don't really know, and they don't. I think just the more information we can get out there about what different groups do, committees and commissions do, I think the better we are, and the more support we'll get from Northampton and constituents. And it's such an important group, and the work that you all are doing is so important. I think it's really a great opportunity to let people know that we are really doing work, and just the money you've saved the city, and just this grant that we got. I think people need to hear that, and that not that it's just like putting money out all the time to buy new toys. It's you've done a lot of great work, and you've really made some great changes, and I think people need to hear about it.
Okay, so that actually the framing in that comment, it makes me want to point to this story about Eric saying, "Oh, well, how far back can we go?" I think the right distance back to go is actually to before there was CAPA, and to the Northampton Sustainability Plan. What was 2019? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, originally 2008. Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know if you.
Because I think there is value in saying this commission has been a participant over a long period of time, and that the city's been making progress, getting a picture of what that is, and and kind of how it's all working together. Because I wouldn't want to make it over the past year, CAPA's done these things because NESC is much bigger than CAPA, and there's a whole lot of stuff that CAPA's not touching at all. That's actually the big stuff, and actually the stuff that really affects the choices residents make. And that's really kind of in Carolyn's remit. So I don't know how you would feel about maybe even tag teaming that sort of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how, I mean, I think the idea of going back to sort of the baseline plan from 2008 makes sense because that's when that was sort of the impetus for having the energy officer to begin with, which is sort of the start of that trajectory. And if you're talking about moving towards electrification and fossil fuel free, that set that policy statement in motion with action. And so I guess, we can not necessarily go into all the details, but just, I think people probably either might not be here, might not have been here when that, or weren't aware. And so that, I think it makes sense to at least start as a starting point. We don't need to spend a lot of time on all those intervening years, but I think you're right. And there are other things that we could tie into sort of energy or trying to reduce consumption that then has that impact of, more sustainable function and use. And there's all sorts of things I think we could talk about that make sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate this invitation too, and more ideas came to mind while we were having this discussion. But I definitely want to echo my interest in NESC supporting it for sure, and like the ideas so far around like just kind of talking about a timeline and all the different commitments that the city has made or adjustments that have been made in alignment with a fossil fuel free future. Wow. But the other things that came to mind for you, Denise, like just ideas for the group. I was thinking that Smith College would probably want to be a part of this in some way because they have the geothermal project, which isn't wind or it isn't solar or wind, but it is another highly efficient way to heat and cool buildings, and they're doing it on their campus. And I also imagine that students on Smith campus who are interested in this topic would want to know about the event as well. So it might be nice to coordinate with them, and maybe they could speak. I know they have a ready-made presentation on all the geothermal you cannot see. So I've seen it in a great kind of video voiceover of their project. I was also thinking that maybe Strong Towns Northampton might be interested in participating in this event as well, mostly because of just kind of their smart growth advocacy and how that kind of relates to energy efficiency and at large energy conservation. And of course, with new building and those new building requirements can support those kind of highly efficient projects. So those were two ideas that came to mind.
Okay.
I have two
Oh, sorry.
just really quickly. So to Carolyn's point, I think you were here when these things happened, like at least in 2017, when we went through the whole work with the consultants and came up with the climate plan. And I think there were many citizens who were involved in that, and they've never heard about it again. It was adopted, and they don't understand how it's involved in planning and city functions. And so I think it would be really good to connect that to what people are doing. And then as far as the Smith College geothermal, it actually does have a solar end to it, because of course the geothermal doesn't run by itself. It needs energy to run the pumps and everything. And that is solar powered, right, from their installation in Maine. So they are going to be all solar generating the energy that they need for the campus and the geothermal system. So anyway, it is related, and I think you're absolutely right. We do need to get students engaged. I would actually wanted to have a tour and tours of houses, that had already been retrofitted. I thought, but that's a different event. That's just like, I can't get too carried away. But I think Eric was the one who pointed out that might just be too much for one chunk. But it would be wonderful to have tours so people could see operational things.
All right, Louis?
One of the Valley CDC has been doing a lot of
Right.
energy efficient multifamily stuff. I wonder, it'd be nice to get, Smith is the large scale. Valley CDC is sort of, I mean, it's in the greater scheme of things, it's a small scale, but if we could put together Smith plus somebody doing multifamily housing plus somebody doing single family housing, we could get a little, here's how I mean, our version of big projects is not really a big project, but it's our big project. So we could start from there and trickle it down. And I'd love to throw something in about the new tiny houses that the building code's promoting, which could be completely self-sustaining without a whole lot of trouble.
And it would be great if you wanted to give us some suggestions about people you think would be good to invite to represent. Yeah.
Laura Baker, start there.
I mean, in that same vein, I think, we were talking earlier about having someone from the building department with more than a pile of papers, but to talk about the, the code and what it means to build to that. There's also a high cost component to that. And so I think there have been, lots of barriers to people of a range of incomes to be able to make those changes, even with the incentives that we've had to date. So maybe even someone like Megan McDonough from Habitat who can come and talk about the ways that Habitat has been able to sort of maneuver through those costs and still create housing that meets the new code requirements.
It sounds to me like instead of a pile of papers, it sounds like a panel, right? Maybe Louis and Laura Baker and Megan McDonough on a panel.
Or Gary Hartman from Smith College. I'm not sure we could get somebody from Smith College.
Yeah, I would try Beth Hooker. She's the
from
at Seeds, and Gary Hartwell retired though.
But you can always drag him out.
You can always drag him out
Yeah.
because now he's got all the time in the world,
Especially on Sunday.
Deb?
I agree. Laura Baker would be a great addition. They did a wonderful job at 23 Laurel, all energy efficient solar. There's also a group of students at Smith that Marissa and I worked with to do the resolution about the oil companies paying. So I don't think they graduated yet, but I could dig out their names too. If I don't know how broad their scope is, but they work with Climate Action Now and those groups, Sunrise, and so they'd be really good. But getting back to the pile of papers, I think a panel is a great idea, but I think just some kind of chart, because people don't read a lot of stuff. But if they see, like a punch list of things that your department has accomplished, and I think, the money it saved, or cost, whatever, the grants you got, just that they can look at quickly might be helpful. And, some kind of flow chart about projects and going into the future, what the plans are.
So maybe we put together a panel, because I think people would actually be interested in these building things as a panel, but then there might be what you're describing seems more like a table with a poster, and so like certainly we could have a NESC table that, so like, yeah, maybe nobody really wants to hear the narrative of kind of how Northampton has moved forward, but we do want to convey that sense of momentum that has been building over a fairly long period of time. So I don't know. Does that sound appropriate to you, Carolyn? That instead of a tag team panel between us, we just kind of do some sort of a poster at a table instead?
Yeah, I mean, but we need people to answer questions, right? When
Yeah.
they see the poster and they want to know more.
Right.
But I mean, and I think the other thing we obviously need to be mindful of is, you know, how much time people have or can commit to something like that.
I mean, I think the event itself is only meant to be 2 hours, 3 hours at most.
We had it down for three, maybe
Okay.
4.
Yeah.
But that, you know, I don't know if we're thinking of setup and tear down and everything.
Yeah.
And we are thinking of it being kind of a fun event too, right?
Yeah.
So people will come in and you could do both. You could have a table that's there and then you could do a presentation once or twice. So if the
Sure.
event was like noon till 4, then maybe, or noon till 3, you could do one at 1 and one at 2:30 or something, you know, spread it out. So
I was thinking, I didn't mean to not do the panel. I was thinking in addition to the panel, have some kind of handout for people.
Yeah, I think that's,
I think the panel also would pique their interest and they'd want hopefully to know more about it and be able to take something with them.
this all goes to the subject that we in Kappa have been talking with Angie about intermittently, which is the fact that we're terrible at marketing and we need help with that. And so maybe some handout is an outcome of some sort of marketing attempt.
Or I would also maybe suggest that if we create something that then can be embedded on the website and then you get people, you just put up a QR code and then people can go to the website and that way they can share it with people who weren't there and printing.
Okay, Eric Winkler and then Eric Broadbent. You're muted. You're muted, Eric.
Sorry, that's just my mouth moving and no sound. I'm trying not to be redundant. I think it would serve us to develop a timeline with milestones that have been achieved over that timeline. Go back to 2008, but there are some very significant events or activities that have, you know, been fostered by this group and implement. I'm thinking, you know, the community choice aggregation is huge. And, you know, as many people that don't look at their electric bills and even know that it happened, you know, I think those kinds of milestones and you know, the work that Louie's been doing with new code. I mean, these are things that would fit very nicely on a milestone chart over time, and using a talking session to just add some color to it versus just having words on a piece of paper. But I worked for an organization that had a timeline from when it was created, and it marked out 8 or 9 significant milestones. Those are the things it wants to be known for, and I think we have an opportunity to do that as well. So I would I'm fine with a piece of paper that has that, and maybe even more slightly more elaboration than just what could go in a little balloon on a timeline chart. But I think it's helpful to highlight the 7 or 8 significant things that have come out of the commission, and then as well to really emphasize what our mission is and where we're going as a conclusion, you know, for people to take away. Okay.
Eric Broadbent. Also muted.
Yes, thank you. Eric's are muted today. Eric, as you were talking, I was imagining a timeline with underneath would be a QR code that you could go to and link to the blurb, you know, that's more detailed, but maybe that's a little too nerdy. We also, Carolyn, you said, yes, we would need people to answer questions. And this really is, you know, the opportunity to educate the public on things. And And in the spirit of where we are going, educating the people about the benefits of Picture Main Street could be another great opportunity in terms of energy and sustainability. There are some benefits. So I know this is a topic that the public could stand some more education on, I think, to help alleviate some of the questioning that we've heard. So that's just a suggestion. I don't know. I'd be willing to help with that. I know that, is it Jim Nash is somebody's working on envisioning it, but yeah, so maybe he should be invited as well. So it's just a suggestion.
Great idea. All right. Is there any more discussion on this? Basically, I think that we're going to actually use the minutes for something this time, because I think we can collect these ideas and kind of like farm them out to actually do things. Okay. Still more discussion. So Louis and then Eric.
The only thing to mention is that NESC predates the Green Communities Act. So we should make sure that we put that out there. And then there's a lot of like these little nuggets of information that get people's attention, is like how little energy a new house uses compared to what a house used in 2006, which was the predicate level for the current code even. So sorry, I'm done.
Great idea.
Okay, Eric.
Yeah, so what's the ask and what's the process? What do you propose as a process? We're going to vote?
I'll always defer to Carolyn, but I think we don't have to vote on this. I think the ask was y'all participate, and it seems like at a base level, Kappa and planning should get together and figure out what their contribution would be, and try to represent NESC as an organization or an entity, whatever, the institution, from, in its timeline, convey this sense of momentum. And that's kind of what we're doing. I think this was more of a call for everyone to think of what they could contribute.
But I agree, Eric, organizationally. So are you all planning to meet in August?
We haven't discussed that.
Well, so what I would suggest is, like, at the next meeting, everybody have like an idea of sort of framework of what they've come up with. And if you're not going to meet in August, then for sure September, because of the event's the 21st, and you meet like September, I don't know what, 9th, whatever it is, then, we will know how many tables do we need, how many presenters are there going to be, and all that kind of thing as organizers, so that we can get our act together.
I actually have a process question having to do with open meeting law. Like, if we were to create some sort of a shared cloud document and we're contributing to it more than once, does that constitute communications with a group of larger than 2 members?
Yeah, I mean, if this is sort of organizing logistics for an event, I think that would, and if the whole idea is sort of put together sort of a framework to bring back to the committee, I think that should be okay.
Okay. Just wanted to check. So I think
Not voting on anything, and it's just a presentation. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we can ask Counselor Jarrett, because he's a good resource for this kind of stuff.
but I think the basic idea that we should figure out who's doing what,
Yeah.
and that this isn't the best forum to do that. It's really just look at a list, create it into small little groups, and do your thing. So I'll propose that we're going to go through the transcript, generate some minutes, figure out from those what people's initial contributions were, and try to create, whether it's a single Google Doc or whatever it is, to to help us organize.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you want to communicate. Adele is.
Okay. Adele.
Thank you. I may have missed something, but part of the ask, I imagine, is getting the NESC to be an official co-sponsor of this event. So perhaps that would involve a vote.
Was that an ask, Denise? Is it that you would like us to be an official co-sponsor? Right.
So we are looking for co-sponsors who we would like to advertise on our materials that we create. And so, yes, if you think that needs a vote, then.
Okay. So we could frame this as a recommendation to the mayor that NESC is an official co-sponsor. Is that how it would work?
Yeah, or it could be, the NESC committee's voting on being co-sponsor and then subject to, final sign off.
Okay.
Mayor. Yeah.
Anyone want us to move to adopt that language?
I vote to move to adopt the language of us being a co-sponsor.
Any second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Angie Gregory seconds. Okay. Let us vote on that. Carolyn Mish.
Yes.
Deb Clemmer.
Yes.
Angie Gregory.
Yes.
Ben Weil, yes. Eric Winkler.
Yes.
Louis Hasbrook.
Yes.
Okay. The measure is adopted. Cool. So, thank you very much, Adele, for pushing us to take that action, and for Denise for bringing this whole thing to us.
Thank you.
And so we do not have to spend 20 minutes on this discussion, and we can choose to postpone it, but I did want to throw into this circumstance the option to discuss, like, how do we see our own work going forward, particularly both on behalf of residents and certain choices that cities and large organizations might have, given the losers and interesting winners on the energy portions of the of HR1 that is now a law at the federal level. My basic summary of that. Sorry, there was something in the chat? Oh, yeah, sorry. My basic summary of that is that solar, especially rooftop solar, is not going to get an investment tax credit. Heat pumps no longer get an investment tax credit. Residential ground source heat pumps do not get an investment tax credit. However, the geothermal investment tax credit that we have been counting on for things like the high school project and for Forbes and the Hub continues unchanged. And that's because, well, actually, I don't know why, but it basically is because it's commercial and it was classified along with deeper geothermal that is meant for generating power. So at least for now, until they figure out what they did, that's actually intact, as is direct pay, which was another innovation. So those two components from the perspective of the city or for the perspective of a large institution like Smith around Holyoke, that's still in play. Solar is going to be much harder. And there are no incentives anymore. So there's no investment tax credit, no credits for investments in any energy efficiency, investments in EVs, There was a special tax credit which we weren't taking advantage of for energy efficient buildings, which, you know, essentially beyond, and this was again commercial buildings, going beyond standard ASHRAE standard 90.1. So all of that's out. And obviously there's an unfriendliness. The other thing that I think this does is that it's probably going to make electricity more expensive, right? And that means that the economics, especially of going from gas to electricity, is going to get less attractive, at least in the next few years. That's obviously a projection, but it feels like that's probable. So that's kind of the context I feel like we can start thinking about. And I just bring this up as to get essentially direction from NESC, is like, so what should we be thinking about? There's no real agenda. Yeah. Yes, Carolyn.
So just a question for clarification, because I wasn't following those modifications that closely. So you said for commercial geothermal, they haven't really touched that yet. What is that? What's the classification of commercial? Because, you know, Valley is putting geothermal in at their 737 Bridge Road property. Is that commercial? Because it's a big apartment.
I believe
building?
it's commercial. I think
Okay.
the definition of commercial, and Louis can, or you and Louis can correct me, but I think the definition of commercial basically is it above five units in a multi-unit?
Okay.
Yeah.
And were the heat pumps you mentioned, were those just residential heat pumps? Because the geothermal technology, which is a heat exchange, would rely on the heat pumps too. So how does that really?
Well, the investment tax credit is linked to the bore fields. And so it's the fact that there's equipment connected to the bore field that gets it a total investment tax credit of 30% for like all the stuff. But it's not for the heat pumps itself. National Grid will give you money for the heat pumps.
So are those incentives from the utilities still going to be there?
Yes, that's untouched. That has to do with Mass Save, Massachusetts.
So in Massachusetts, it'll still be there, but who knows whether it'll be there in other states? It depends on the utility provider
Or the law governor or the
Yeah.
the regulator. Yeah. Eric.
Yeah. So I'm not an expert on the new law,
No one is.
but I know a little bit about electricity, and I mean to start with, I would say we do exactly what we're doing as aggressively as we intend to do it, because the administration in DC is not going to be necessarily there for much longer than 3 years, and I doubt any legislation can occur that would change the current state of the administration's view on climate, because of the veto potential. But I am optimistic that in the next administration, all of these changes, these negative changes that are addressing climate will be turned around and move forward. And hopefully the single industry, the single largest growing industry in the United States will continue to be continue to grow, which is the energy sector, the renewable and clean energy sector. It is the fastest growing job market, and the my comment is misguided to eliminate the most important industry in the U.S., which is the climate industry. So I say push forward. Massachusetts is #1 in the United States for supporting energy efficiency and climate change. It's beat out California numerous years, and the utilities are absolutely committed to providing conservation. It just makes sense for them. And that's true for all of the New England states, I would say. I'm familiar with all of the energy efficiency programs in the states, in the Eastern Seaboard, and they are all extremely active. I mean, NYSERDA is not going to go away, things like that. So there's lots to be optimistic about, but our goal is to keep moving forward. I will counter Ben a little bit, just to be a curmudgeon here. Energy prices are going to go up regardless of whether we have a clean energy investment supported by the federal government or not. It's just the reality of things. It's the system that we have that's over 100 years old, and there'll continue to be costs and investment in these things that will never make energy less expensive. Just get used to it. I don't necessarily believe the tax laws necessarily going to change electricity prices. It's certainly not in New England. We're gas centric and will continue to be gas centric for quite some time. So I would say, you know, the investment tax credit is a bummer for rooftop solar for residential. I mean, without that, I'm very curious to see what some of the local installers are thinking about in terms of moving this forward. But, you know, the state, you know, Massachusetts is still going to have $1,000 kickback on residential rooftop solar. I don't see that changing, and maybe they'll triple it, maybe they'll quadruple it. Who knows? I mean, they may want to make that investment as a state, and other states can do that as well. So I appreciate this discussion because it can feel like debilitating and demoralizing to work so hard and then have bumps in the road, but there's always bumps in the road. So we keep going, we keep pushing forward as hard as we can, and just ignore what Washington isn't supporting. I just and fight for it too, not just acquiesce, but I'm trying to be optimistic about the future. We have a long way to go. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wish I could be so optimistic. What will happen? I mean, you might not know, but what are your thoughts on now the requirement that people that are doing major renovations have to have green energy options, and I mean, how will that affect them if, you know, they can't get this stuff, or it's like becomes, I mean, I guess there was a clause in it that if it's gets the price too out of hand, then they might not be able to do.
So are we thinking specifically about the fuel-free ordinance that governs in Northampton? So again, for new construction, despite so for instance, Eric, I was not saying that electricity prices will go up and other prices will go down, or that electricity prices were going to go down. It's more that the delta between gas, the cost to heat a house with gas and the cost to heat a house with electricity would get larger. In other words, gas will be less affected. This is at the system level where additional capacity of batteries and PV was the cheapest way to do it. But put that aside for now. So for new construction, I think it's still the case that it is the lowest cost approach. Like we did that analysis of like, well, you could meet this really, really low HERS rating in order to be allowed to use the gas. But at that point, you might as well just do the electricity because, so like all of that, I think still plays out for new construction and even major renovations. I think there's still, there were, waivers or carve outs, whatever, that had to do with capacity availability and inability to get capacity, and that is still in place. But it may be that the utilities actually have reason to invest in more distribution capacity, because that opening up the opening up the lines to more locations actually lets them manage the grid better without having to build more plants. In other words, they can get power to more places. I don't know if that really answers your question.
We also still have a gas moratorium,
And
so,
we still have a gas.
you know, and you're basically saying, am I going to do propane or?
Right. And propane still won't be competitive. But I think the reason I brought that up was not so much about the new construction. I think that it's really about when you try to make the case to somebody, you should go off of gas entirely. That was an easier case to make if electricity wasn't going to increase at the new possible rate. Denise has a contribution. Yeah.
That happens, then that we get somebody.
Yeah, that's on the distribution side, but not on the supply side. So, but I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm just trying to think about. So for instance, if we know that it's going to be harder and harder to site offshore wind. And that was a big part of Massachusetts' plan for decarbonizing the electric grid. We may find new and bigger tariffs on electricity coming in from Quebec. So all of those things, I still say, like Eric is right. The trend is we are going to get a cleaner, better grid. Like we're going to do it. But if you think about, should we be pushing the transition to electrification at the rate that we were hoping to push it for locally? Or should we be, for instance, focusing on weatherization and reducing demand and thinking, well, the grid will be cleaner a little later. So switching more things over to electricity a little later might actually work better in terms of the total carbon emissions. And if we can, in the meantime, invest in stuff that is unaffected by federal policy, with the exception of LIHEAP, which funds weatherization. Yeah. But that's the kind of concept I was thinking about. Eric.
Ben, I love talking about this stuff because it's quite wonky, but I mean, weatherization, nothing wrong with weatherization, but it's a conservation of delivered fuels, gas and oil. Yeah. I don't think we should put the brakes anyway on electrification. The whole idea of electrification is that if you do still provide some central, central supply plant, power plants, it's cleaner at the smokestack than it is to have delivered fuels burned on site. In aggregate, the carbon emissions are lower. Maybe I'm making this up, but I'm pretty sure that having it centrally treated under air permit requirements is very different than having a bunch of furnaces burning on-site fuel. So the idea of moving forward with electrification should not be changed in terms of the effort there. My point about pricing is, first of all, gas, we're at the end of the gas pipeline. That's not going to change. And gas projects take years and years and years for permitting, which will way long outlast, this administration in terms of what's going to happen. It's never going to change. So gas prices, just because they're drilling in the Arctic, isn't going to make gas any cheaper here in New England. It's just not. So
and they're not drilling.
I don't believe there's any downward pressure on wholesale electricity prices as a result of an administration that's favoring fossil. Massachusetts is never going to permit an oil fired gas, or a oil fired plant. And there haven't been any gas fired plants built in New England in a decade. So those things they're just not going to change. We're already too far into this to change. I do know that the wind permitting from a federal standpoint is an impediment, but there have been a lot of other impediments to wind development besides the feds changing the permit requirements. So it's unfortunate, and it'll be very curious to see how in Massachusetts unwind contracts that can't be fulfilled because we've made huge commitments to purchasing offshore wind. So I'm pushing the optimistic approach. I'm saying let's stay the course. The electrification process, it is what needs to happen. I mean, I do believe it's unfortunate on the ITC side because the Biden administration continued the full 30% ITC for rooftop solar. That I think that's gonna slow things down a little bit. Do you happen to know if the insulation, the deduction on the federal tax for insulation is also gone?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's all unfortunate, but that's not helpful. Okay,
I mean, I think one neat impact, though, of Mass Save is that people, so much of it is paid for by Mass Save that people weren't able to take that much of a deduction if they were doing renovations within the Mass Save program. So I think that may have a less of an impact in Massachusetts than in some places that don't have as great a program. Louis.
One thing that goes with Eric's perspective is that we got through COVID. Massachusetts got through COVID without a hell of a lot of help, and did it in a relatively, compared to other places in the country, effective way, and did it because people are committed, and people are as committed on some level to energy, to having a warm house to live in, that as they are to surviving COVID. So I feel confident after having been through the Massachusetts experience with COVID that we'll persevere in this.
Angie.
So is kind of what I'm hearing, like that we also want to support or recognize that there is going to be financial implications for residents and create barriers for projects to happen? Is that kind of what we're trying to figure out? Like how the commission would support people in navigating that? Or because if we're pushing those projects, but we know that they're not really attainable because now the cost is just going to be too high? Is that the reason?
I think it's more, it was really more just to get the sense. And I mean, I appreciate that the sense is optimistic and push, which is, I think, good. I think, we can expect individual residents to make their own self-interested decisions. And if you don't have $75,000 worth of credit to buy an EV, that might be the difference between buying an EV and something else. And one thing that's just kind of been a trend is what's really popular right now is plug-in hybrid EVs, because we haven't built a good enough infrastructure, what we were supposed to do for charging. So people want the security of being able to fill up at the gas station. And yet they now have 40, 60 miles range, which for most people is all the trips they ever do, or 90, whatever. So that didn't have the same tax incentive, and therefore we may see more of those. Does that mean that, for instance, do we push ahead on try and get more DC fast chargers because we just think there's going to be the demand and we want to build ahead of the demand, assuming that either the prices are coming down? That's the other thing, is that there's a conversion of price on EVs and ICE vehicles already. So, do we build ahead of that? And do we have the city make efforts to prepare that infrastructure? Or do we say, well, if you've got a plug-in hybrid, you can only charge at 3 kW. So really a bunch of level twos is all you need.
See, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that is, if we take the charge ahead approach, literally, we'd want to say, okay, forget those bozos in DC because they're not going to be around for more than 3 years. And we have to assume that the demand is going to continue. I mean, the other thing is wondering what's happening around globally in terms of EV vehicles and whether, that pressure is going to come and people are going to say, wait a second, we're getting left out here. And there are lots of lower cost options outside of the state. So, I wonder how much that will play into that. So I guess my response would be, I think we should assume or make some judgments that we should be planning for that time when we'll break through this blockade.
I mean, I think you're right. I think what's going to happen is that some American manufacturers are going to lose and they'll become small players, and BYD will start selling cars in America because the tariffs will be gone when that administration is gone. And they're selling cars for new, really good cars for $10,000. Derek, you had your hand up, and you still.
I would just add, going on the EV thing. I mean, American car manufacturers have made billions of dollars of investments in producing EVs. That's not going away. None of them are happy at all about losing the $7,500 incentive. And remember, that incentive is a limited. It's a finite incentive, and there's a certain number of cars, and then there's no more incentive. So let's not forget. I mean, the big three and certainly manufacturing that can shift over to the U.S. side. Not that it's necessarily going to happen under the Trump administration, but that's not going to change. So I think the EV stuff is just maybe a bump in the road. Maybe some of those folks that are on the margin in terms of being able to afford a $40,000 EV versus a $30,000 gas vehicle, those folks, we might lose those. But who knows? Healy could come back and create new incentives. I'd like the commission to send a letter to the governor to say, hey, $1,000 isn't going to cut it anymore. The state needs to invest more in PV because we are moving forward with or without Washington. So let's think about drafting something, or have our counselors draft something for Healy to consider, and add some more money to the table from the state. Those are things that can, if that incentive was $3,000 from the state, well, that's about a third of what the feds were giving. So that's helpful. And I think that can push for it. And who knows what installers and, the folks that are putting in panels are going to do in terms of pricing. I mean, those companies they don't want to close their doors. So they're going to have to do something different. So I would say as a commission, we should consider petitioning the state to contemplate filling the void at this point, because we have no other choice. We're moving in this direction. And Washington made a bad decision, a very bad decision. So
I think that's a good concrete suggestion. We should take up after a little more study. But I think that's a good suggestion. Any other thoughts that people want to share? I mean, we'll come back to all of this.
Just, I mean, I went to New York this weekend and Long Island, and I mean, just outside of Northampton, it's really hard to find chargers. Even in Massachusetts, here it kind of spoiled. It's like, they're on every corner pretty much. And so I think it's good for us too, because we will be a hub. We're right off 91 and people will stop here. We have good coffee, good shoppings and good food. So, yeah, I agree. We should just, keep at it. And it's true. Like I looked ahead and I got a hybrid electric and gas car, and I get about 44 miles. And I mean, I got it in November, and I think I filled it up the third time this weekend. So, it's great to see you buzzing around town and doing little errands, and you never need to fill up.
I mean, we do have some, I don't know if like the Smith Voc chargers are the city's responsibility, but those are all offline. That's a whole lot of chargers. And I don't know, only half of Cooley's work. That's the private property, but I don't know, maybe there's something we can do to support maintenance. Are they not collecting enough to cover maintenance? Smith Voc is definitely not working.
I know that. You know that?
Wait, who's they? Charge Point?
No,
No.
that is they're all offline.
They're all offline. They, in this case, is the administrator, or the business administrator of Smith Voc. Yeah.
They just don't work.
They just don't work.
They used to work last
They used to
summer.
work. There's a claim that they work. We actually have a way that we could just rip and replace them for free, or at least free to the city. But at this time, Smith Voc is not interested in, yeah.
They get to make that decision?
Well, I mean, you know this stuff way better than I do, but Smith Voc is a interesting.
Is it kind of like Forbes Library?
Yeah, it is, because it's got they've got their own board. It's a different governing thing, and it's not clear to me what authority we, and I'm not even sure who we in the city is, that would be able to say, well, you're going to do this thing.
Can you turn off your? They are part of the city budget.
The chargers themselves.
No, they get money from the city.
The electric, I mean, they get an operating budget that includes their electricity budget. Now, if the chargers aren't working, they're not dispensing electricity, so you could argue they're
If the
not.
charger is working, they'd be recouping fees and not paying for their electricity, so wouldn't they want that revenue?
You would think, yeah. So yes, this is a subject that has been under discussion. And we are, I mean, it's nice, Deb, that you're saying that there's enough chargers, but in fact, we get a lot of feedback that there aren't.
Yeah, and thorns.
I didn't say enough. I said
Yeah.
have more than.
So
I don't. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't.
we are
I mean,
actually
there's some secret ones, but
trying really hard to get more chargers in more places, and without having to spend any municipal money, right? So where can we do it for free? It's a lot harder than any of us thought, right? But that is one location.
companies like ChargePoint, I mean, do you still have to pay for them, even though are they making money off of us using them?
Yes, and yes. So, and quite frankly, their equipment is really expensive.
Yeah.
Their cloud fee is expensive. We now have it, so we're kind of stuck until we get to the point where we can replace them with something else. And there are other companies making lower cost, higher speed, better reliability EV chargers with a cloud fee that is $0, and you just give them 10%, which is ChargePoint also gets 10%.
But that's what you're putting it down here, right?
well, that was a topic we didn't bring up, is that we may not be able to do the EV chargers down there because of the AUL for no digging down there.
Oh, but I thought you were also replacing the ones on Crafts Avenue, no?
No, those ones I think were too new.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to direct.
We were replacing, we are replacing some
Uh-huh.
where they were old enough and we had not used up the mass EVIP money. We're replacing them because we can. We're adding some to Strong Ave parking and Gare's Rip and Replace and Armory and Strong. Hopefully also at Sheldon Field we'll have it's not quite a fast charger, but it's a smart charger, so it's like 7 times as fast as your typical level 2. So that might, we're trying to bring those in where we can. So yeah, we're trying to build that out. And I agree, Angie, that where there are ones that are older and should be replaced. I mean, quite frankly, it may be that nobody at Cooley Dickinson knows that they might have eligibility there.
True.
And maybe somebody should go let them know about that.
I might do.
So we're off topic a little bit, but we did get anyway. So I got the basic feedback of full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes. And I feel like that's good to at least have the sense of this commission that's where we are. Now on the agenda, we have department head updates, and I feel like I already gave mine. Louis, do you have any?
Well, sort of like a sneaky one. I've been checking at the building code stuff. Building code is changing. They're already talking about a new version of the building code, and the current version started like at the end of June. So, I mean, but regardless, the thing that was most interesting to me is the failure rate of testing for construction supervisors licenses has gone from about 50% failing to about 75% failing. Code is getting more difficult and people are having a harder time being able to cope with the amount of material that the amount of area of building has changed and the energy code is no small part of it. But you figure, I mean, a young person coming out of Smith Voc, the carpentry program is probably not going to be able to pass his licensing. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I only hope it changes. Not to throw too big of a wet towel on things. Anybody want a job?
So is that Louis, is that not like after a project is done and to get it kind of certified, it's like to get their license to
get a permit.
To get their permit.
License to take out a permit to do
Yeah.
it. And what's happened is I think it's gone as time goes by, more and more building activity is done with engineers and architects as opposed to regular contractors. And it's interesting. I'm wondering how it's going to shake out. I think within 6 months, we'll have a much better idea of how things are going to shake out.
It can't be making housing cheaper.
Yeah. Well, they'll have to make the test easier or they won't have anybody.
Carolyn, did you have anything you wanted to report out?
No, I don't really have any updates.
Can I ask Louis a question?
Sure.
Is it because the code is more technical, requiring more engineering and mathematical experience, or is it just becoming too voluminous, that there's too many new things for people to sort of figure out and navigate?
Exactly.
The latter?
No, both things
Both.
mushed together.
Oh.
When I thought about the presentation, I thought about just piling up I said a pile of paper, I meant a pile of the code books. I'd be willing to bet that it's about that high, just 1 and 2 family, between new and existing and plumbing and electrical and blah, 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 blah. So it's changing the way building projects go forward. And like I say, more permits are coming under engineer or architect oversight, even though they don't need to be.
Is that changing the building department's workload because of the lack of experience that's coming forward with projects?
And one of the things that adds to the building department's workload because you have to keep up. And so, it might be 20 hours of continuing ed a year, but that's not enough to keep up with the piece of it. And our work is shifting, not necessarily increasing. We tend to watch engineers and architects because they're not infallible, but they have a lot more authority over a job, and they can submit their own records of inspections. In fact, they're required to substantial completion in accordance with plans. But I think that what I'm seeing is that it's just so much more complicated than it was. Used to have to know how many nails to put in the end of a 2x4. That part has kind of gone by the wayside. Now you need to know what the enthalpy ratio is. So it's different.
And who needs a Department of Education to provide support for vocational training?
Yeah, I think my grandson's at Smith Voc in the electricians program, and he's not liking it all that much. I think that it wasn't. I don't know whether I'd be really interested in talking to somebody in the at Smith Voc that's running some of the like the carpentry program or something. So maybe I'll do that.
Well, on that cheery note, I think we've covered what's on our agenda. Does anyone want to move to adjourn?
To adjourn. Second.
Seconded. Okay. Carolyn Mish,
Yes.
Deb Clemmer,
Yes.
Angie Gregory,
Yes.
and Weil, yes. Louis Hasbrook,
Yes.
Eric Winkler. All right. Well, thank you very much. We are adjourned.